Is Wizardry V Heart of the Maelstrom the charmingly eccentric uncle who shows up at your retro gaming reunion quoting obsolete basic commands, or the cranky granddad who insists the party can't start until someone produces graph paper and a fresh mechanical pencil? Rhetorical question. Obviously it's both, and yes, I'm about to over-answer. Slip the cartridge into your Super Nintendo, give the power switch that satisfying K-chunk, and the game immediately announces it isn't here to coddle you. 8 sprawling dungeon floors, plus the bonus fever dream known as Level 777, descend beneath your digital feet, each corridor lined with traps that chuckle at OSHA guidelines. You'll spend the next dozen hours cursing non-existent autosaves, chanting spell words that read like IKEA product lines, and repeatedly bumping into the most infamous grind buddy in RPG folklore. Murphy's Ghost. Underrated? Absolutely. Critics in '94 ignored it faster than a Blockbuster clerk ignored the Laserdisc section. Overrated? Only if you mistake stubborn complexity for automatic brilliance. Fundamental or forgettable? Both again, in that peculiar Schrodinger's cartridge way. Open the box and the experience is simultaneously timeless and archaic. Close it and the cat, or perhaps the ghost, stays eerily unresolved. Historical context, back up a few years. Okay, more than a few. The original DOS and Apple II release of Wizardry V hit in 1988 at a moment when the franchise already resembled a well-worn player's handbook. Dog-eared, slightly coffee-stained, cherished by dungeon delvers who knew the difference between AC and AAC. Surtech, the American developer-publisher tag team based out of Ogdensburg, New York, had already shipped 4 core installments and 2 expansion-style side quests. In arcades and living rooms alike, the winds were shifting. Japanese console RPGs, Final Fantasy, Phantasy Star, Dragon Quest were storming the magazines with pastel sprites, emotive cutscenes, and stories bigger than the haircuts on Saved by the Bell. Surtech's answer was audacious. Port the most labyrinthine, least hand-holding chapter of their series to the console crowd. Enter Game Studio, enlisted by ASCII to shepherd those archaic PC binaries onto the Super Famicom. The Japanese version dropped 20 November 1992, wedged between Dragon Quest V's family tree melodrama and romancing Saga 2's Empire management experimentation. Imagine strolling the electronics aisle of a Tokyo department store that winter, shelves ablaze with flashy box art, and in the middle sits Wizardry V, muted palette, austere logo, quietly daring you to ditch cinematic bombast and descend into a single mega dungeon. Japanese magazines labeled it Gaijin Hardcore, which in gaming parlance sits somewhere between cult classic and masochistic curiosity. Stateside, the journey took longer. Capcom, riding high on Street Fighter II royalties, licensed the cartridge for North America and shipped it in April 1994. Picture it, Super Metroid had just taught us how to wall jump across planets. Final Fantasy III, okay 6, was about to teach us how to outrun the apocalypse on an opera house balcony, and there, next to Donkey Kong's pre-rendered pecs, sat an unassuming box promising wireframe corridors. My first brush came that summer inside a Rhode Island pizza parlor with an aging SNES kiosk. The other cartridge, Shaq Fu. Choosing between them was like debating whether to enjoy a marathon or an aneurysm. Against the din of Mortal Kombat quarters and the smell of pepperoni, Wizardry V's title screen glowed. I pressed start. The ghosts, Murphy's included, never let me go. The temporal mismatch became Wizardry V's charm. While PC RPGs sprinted toward isometric freedom, Ultima Sessevens, and early 3D ambition, System Shock was only months away, the SNES port stood defiantly step-locked and text-laden. Yet the design also echoed arcade trends. Capcom's own Dungeons & Dragons Tower of Doom cabinet had revived love for dice-flavored fantasy brawling. Doom on PC, first-person corridors, albeit with copious shotgun percussion, proved that mazes would never truly go out of style. The console lineage may have seemed anachronistic, but it connected those currents, east and west, pen and paper and silicon, and let's pour one out for the manuals. ASCII's Japanese booklet read like a dignified scroll from Record of Lotus War, complete with meticulously typeset kanji spell lists. Capcom's English booklet? Equal parts pulp fantasy and community college Shakespeare. Spells like LOMILWA, light, Lordo don't stand in front of the slicing whirlwind. And TILTOWAIT, if you see this on the stack, call the insurance adjuster, came annotated with line art goblins and stern warnings about permadeath. Those instructions felt like a rite of passage. Flip through, absorb the tables, then realize the game still intends to kill you for mistyping a password on the castle screen. Mechanics booting up in 2025, you're first asked to build a squad of 6 daring souls. Character creation remains an RNG slot machine. Each tap of the D-pad rerolls attributes like strength and vitality. When that mythical 18 flashes, serotonin floods your synapses, and you swear the clerk behind the pizza counter can hear your victory wheeze. You pick races, human, elf, dwarf, hobbit, to chase min-max fantasies, then eye the class list. Fighter and priest are straightforward, but true bragging rights lie in rolling a ninja or samurai. They demand obscene bonus points. A bishop can identify loot and cast both priestly and mage spells, becoming your pocket Swiss Army wizard. Once you name the party, my default is CTRLALTDEL. 6 letters only, thank you early 80s memory constraints. You step through the castle menu into the dungeon. Movement is grid-based. Hit up, advance 1 square. Tap left, rotate 90 degrees. It's a rhythm as meditative as a metronome, yet as nerve-fraying as flossing grenades. On a modern screen, those brick textures look like pixelated Bauhaus wallpaper, but squint and you'll recognize the blueprint for nearly every DRPG released since. Corridor, intersection, door, stairs down. Here's where the SNES edition tries, rather sweetly, to meet newbies halfway. Cast the level 1 spell DUMAPIC, and instead of cryptic XY coordinates, you now get a tidy minimap panel in the corner. Don't cheer too loudly. The automap isn't permanent. Purists can and do toggle an option that forces DUMAPIC back to raw numbers. So break out that quad-ruled notebook, teleporters, spinners, and silent squares. Tiles that mute the sound cue you rely on to spot said spinners remain gleefully intact. Remember the promise of Murphy's Ghost. On level 1, you stumble into a certain empty room where, if you camp, a ghost materializes. It's tough enough to grant buckets of experience, yet predictable enough to be farmable. Every Wizardry veteran knows this specter like a favorite barista. Conversations at conventions go, "Hey, remember where you cheesed the early grind?" And someone inevitably answers, "Murphy, baby." The SNES port even gives him a spectral blue sprite, a shivering cloak that flickers between animation frames like a Famicom cartridge loosely seated in its pin connector. His legacy as comedic thread, unimpeachable, unlike those non-existent acid-spitting frogs I hallucinated in an earlier draft. Apologies, amphibian enthusiasts. The frogs croak in other RPGs. The ghosts haunt this one. Combat remains text-heavy but intuitive once muscle memory sets in. Front row characters can attack or parry. Back row casters lob spells or sling projectiles. Initiative is rolled each round, so even high agility ninjas sometimes watch in horror as kobold lords nick their kneecaps. Spells arrive in 3 distinct flavors. The luminous utility of LOMILWA, a long-lasting light that embarrasses torch vendors. The dimensional doorway of MALOR, input wrong coordinates, and you may embed your team inside a wall. Goodbye characters, and the nuke level carnage of TILTOWAIT. But let us honor Lorto correctly this time. Rather than shielding heroes, it summons a slicing wall of wind blades that tears an enemy group for 6 to 36 points of damage. Want defense? Cast Maporphic, which conjures that shimmering force field I incorrectly attributed to Lorto the first time around. Consider the distinction a small PhD in Vancian linguistics. One mispronunciation, and suddenly the ghost of E. Gary Gygax scrawls a demerit on your character sheet. Traps punctuate exploration like cruel punchlines. Treasure chests frequently house needles that poison, bombs that explode, crossbows that triple shot your face, and teleport triggers that yeet you to level 4 without anesthesia. Disarming requires selecting the chest's likely mechanism from a menu, gas cloud, blades, stone curse, etc. Choose wrong? Someone in the party faceplants, perhaps loses a level courtesy of level drain, Wizardry's answer to the IRS. Fortunately, your thief can search for traps as many times as your patience allows. Unfortunately, a ghost's cold breath or a vampire bat's fang bite can undo 5 hours of progress faster than you can say should have kept a backup save. Oh wait, you can't. Capcom preserved the single save file limit strictly, like a museum curator encasing your mistakes in amber. 8 dungeon floors may sound manageable, but each is an Escher meets Dante coil of twisty hallways, secret doors, and teleport mazes. Level 5 infamously gates progress behind a riddle puzzle that paraphrases the mythic Sphinx. What creature walks on 4 legs at dawn, 2 at noon, 3 at dusk? Answer, man in all caps, or boom, pit trap. Level 7 is a vertiginous lattice of one-way doors. Tread carelessly, and you'll spend half an afternoon begging MALOR's coordinate math to land you back at the stairs. Then there's level 777, hidden behind multiple quest gates, and as structurally unfriendly as a David Lynch dreamscape. Its corridors loop on themselves with malicious glee, staffed by high-tier demons that spam level drain like candy from a piñata. I've seen streamers reach the cusp of the endgame only to rage quit here, mumbling, "Not like this," not to Murphy's second cousin. Murphy's ghost, by the way, doesn't vanish after level 1. Designers being cheeky, they reintroduce spectral variants deeper inside. Sometimes you'll idly open a random door on level 6 and wham, there he is, XP jackpot at the cost of a few heart palpitations. I like to imagine an unspoken ghost fraternity attending your spelunking journey. Ah, you've met my brother on level 1. Permit me to drain your cleric's stamina in his honor. And yet you keep fighting him because those juicy experience totals feel like crisp bills dispensed from a haunted ATM. The alignment system injects morality friction. Characters are good, neutral, or evil. Mix evil and good in the same camp, and you'll discover that some simply refuse to tag along. Trigger an optional switch that flips your moral compass, say by stabbing a chained prisoner for laughs, and your previously loyal Valkyrie may ghost, pun absolutely intended, the party at once. In an age before voiced companion banter, this silent protest packs surprising punch. It's like your cartridge has feelings, and those feelings occasionally judge you for min-maxing XP at Murphy's expense. In the SNES port, audiovisual flourishes try to lighten the brutality. The pastel palette may look subdued compared with Secret of Mana's saturated greens, but those quietly scrolling floor textures create an almost hypnotic cadence. Composer Kentaro Haneda's soundtrack rearrangement bathes the maze in airy synth strings, spa music for the soul, punctuated by crunchy Door Creek samples that remind you, in Dolby stereo, just how heavy a portcullis can sound. Is it perfect? Of course not. Encounter frequency sometimes spikes so high you suspect the random number generator runs on hummingbird adrenaline. A stroll down one corridor can spawn 3 back-to-back slugfests, turning quick check for secret doors into, why did the kobold captain bring a cousin and a Hydra? And yes, loading times when entering the castle menu approach early PlayStation territory. Every fade to black a chance to reconsider life choices. Yet each annoyance crystallizes into the game's identity. Wizardry is a conversation you have to meet halfway. Offer respect, prepare, map, strategize, and it rewards you with secrets modern RPGs too often spoon-feed: legacy and influence. So what did Wizardry V leave in its wake besides a trail of graph paper confetti and frog guts? For starters, it helped cement Wizardry's cult status in Japan. ASCII's port prompted console-only gamers to embrace Western stat crunch, indirectly seeding influences that bloom later in series like Etrian Odyssey. Atlas developers have openly cited Wizardry as formative. The SNES entry also kept Surtech's brand alive just long enough for Wizardry the Key's eventual 2001 swan song. Without these console royalties, the Midwest studio might have shuttered sooner, and we'd never have experienced Vi Domina's latex-clad space opera. Mechanically, Wizardry V's single vertical dungeon concept prefigures mega dungeon design philosophies in pen and paper modules like Rappin' a Thuk and video game spiritual cousins such as Darkest Dungeon's endless quest lines. Its alignment-locked party system foreshadows Baldur's Gate's companion squabbles, while its devious tile traps resurface wholesale in From Software's King's Field, Miyazaki's first baby step toward Soulsborne notoriety. Yes, I'm saying Ornstein owes a Christmas card to a Murphy. Why then is Wizardry V still niche? Aesthetics primarily. By SNES standards, its visuals are functional but drab, a study in brown bricks and teal slime. Its learning curve spikes like a Star Destroyer, and its interface, menus nested inside menus, icons that require the manual's glossary, makes modern QL disciples break out in hives. In an era where Chrono Trigger delivered time travel joyrides without demanding D-pad calisthenics, Wizardry V felt like homework assigned by a dungeon master professor. Closing paragraph plus score, Wizardry V on the SNES is the video game equivalent of insisting your friends watch a grainy VHS of Labyrinth on a 12-inch CRT because the scan lines are part of the magic. It's creaky, cranky, and occasionally cruel, but treat its dungeon like a conversation rather than a chore. And it answers back with secrets modern RPGs forgot how to whisper. Also, Murphys. Can't forget those acidic Irish frogs. Tap dancing on my childhood trauma. Final verdict. I'm giving it a 7.5 out of 10. A charmer encased in cobwebs, worth dusting off if you like your nostalgia with teeth and your frogs with questionable surnames.